Don't overlook your quarters. Some are worth much more than 25 cents. The 1967 Washington quarter, the 1989 quarter, and the 1999 Connecticut State quarter can all be valuable if they have rare mint errors, high-grade condition, or special varieties. Collectors pay big money, sometimes hundreds or even thousands of dollars, for these coins. Check your change today. You might already have one of these hidden treasures. The 1967 Washington quarter-dollar coin is one of those fascinating pieces of U.S. coinage history that collectors always keep an eye on. Not because the year itself was particularly special for the series, but because it produced a variety of minting errors that today transform an otherwise ordinary 25-cent piece into something rare and highly desirable. The Washington quarter has been part of American pockets and purses since 1932, when it was introduced to honor the bicentennial of George Washington's birth. By 1967, the design by John Flanagan had become a standard, featuring the left-facing bust of Washington on the obverse with the word Liberty arched above his head, the national motto "I in God we trust" to the left, and the date below. On the reverse, an eagle with spread wings rests on a bundle of arrows, framed by olive branches, with United States of America above and quarter-dollar below. It was a familiar sight to Americans, but hidden among the millions of coins produced that year were mistakes that collectors today cherish as remarkable treasures. To understand why 1967 quarters are particularly intriguing, you have to look at the historical context. In the mid-1960s, the U.S. Mint was grappling with a massive coin shortage. Rising silver prices had caused the government to remove silver from circulating dimes and quarters beginning in 1965, replacing them with copper-nickel-clad compositions. These coins had a pure copper core sandwiched between two layers of nickel, giving them the familiar silvery appearance. By 1967, this transition was still relatively new, and the mint was working at full capacity to produce enough clad coinage to satisfy the public's demand. It was also a year when no mint marks appeared on coins. From 1965 through 1967, the mint intentionally removed mint marks from all denominations in an effort to discourage coin hoarding. Collectors had been pulling too many coins out of circulation based on mint mark rarity, which only worsened the shortage. So, whether a quarter was struck in Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco, it carried no mint mark. This means that identifying 1967 error coins doesn't depend on mint origin but rather on the unique mistakes that slipped past the mint's strict quality control. Error coins come in many forms, and the 1967 Washington quarter offers examples across the spectrum. Some of the most dramatic involve off-center strikes. An off-center error occurs when the planchet, or blank piece of metal, is not seated correctly in the coin press. When struck, the design appears shifted to one side, leaving part of the coin blank. Minor off-centers of 5% or 10% are collectible but not particularly valuable. However, dramatic off-centers showing 40% to 60% of the design missing, especially if the date remains visible, can bring hundreds of dollars at auction. A mint state 1967 quarter with a 50% off-center strike once sold for over $23,500, proving how these unusual coins capture collector imagination. Broad strikes are another fascinating error type from 1967 quarters. This happens when the retaining collar fails during striking, allowing the metal to expand outward. The result is a quarter that appears larger and thinner than normal, with a distorted rim. Broad strikes are strikingly different from regular coins, making them very collectible. Depending on condition, a 1967 broad-struck quarter could be worth between $41,100 and $42. $250. One of the most popular errors for collectors are wrong planchet strikes. In 1967, with the mint working overtime, it was possible for blanks intended for other denominations to slip into the presses. Imagine finding a Washington quarter struck on a dime planchet. It would be smaller and lighter, with parts of the design cut off. These errors are very rare but can bring serious money. A genuine 1967 quarter struck on a dime planchet might sell for several $1,000s at auction, especially if authenticated and graded by a top-tier grading service like PCGS or NGC. Similarly, a quarter struck on a foreign planchet, such as one intended for coins of another country, could be worth just as much or more. Clipped planchets are another intriguing variety. These occur when the metal strip used to punch blanks overlaps during production, creating blanks with crescent-shaped clips. When struck, The resulting coin has a noticeable missing portion along the rim. A 1967 Washington quarter with a dramatic clip could be worth $2,275 to $3,150, depending on the size and eye appeal of the clip. Double clips, where two portions of the coin are missing, are even rarer and command higher premiums. Double die errors from 1967 also exist, though they are scarcer than those from more famous years like 1955 or 1972 cents. A double die occurs when the hub impresses the design into the die more than once, at a slightly different angle. On Washington quarters, this doubling might appear on the inscriptions Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, or the date. In strong examples, it can even show on Washington's profile. A bold double die 1967 quarter could easily fetch several $100s. While minor doubling might only add $14, $25, or $15,550 to a coin's value, dramatic doubling has driven prices much higher at auction. Another unusual error seen in 1967 quarters is die clashes. This happens when the obverse and reverse dies strike each other without a planchet in between, transferring faint outlines of one design onto the other die. Coins struck afterward show these ghostly impressions, such as parts of the eagle's wings on Washington's cheek or elements of his bust on the reverse field. Collectors love these eerie-looking errors, and depending on how visible the clash is, a 1967 quarter with this mistake might sell for $5,000 to $12,000. Struck-through errors are also prized. These occur when a foreign object, like a piece of wire, a scrap of cloth, or even a fragment of another planchet, gets stuck between the die and the planchet during striking. The result is a coin with unusual depressions or shapes impressed into its surface. These can vary wildly in appearance, making them fun to collect. Some struck-through errors from 1967 quarters have sold for $12,150 or more, especially if the foreign material remains embedded in the coin. Auction records bring the story of the 1967 Washington quarter to life. For example, a superb mint state 67 graded 1967 quarter with a broad strike error realized over $24,400 at a heritage auction. Another piece, a dramatic off-center error showing half of Washington's bust missing but the date still visible, sold for nearly $600. One of the most jaw-dropping sales involved a 1967 quarter struck on a nickel planchet, which fetched more than $22,200. These prices show just how passionate collectors are about minting errors from this transitional era. Even coins without errors can be valuable if they survive in pristine condition. Because 1967 quarters were mass-produced and heavily circulated, high-grade examples are rare. Most coins from this year show significant wear. In fact, finding a 1967 quarter in mint state 66 or higher is challenging, and collectors are willing to pay strong premiums. A top-graded 1967 Washington quarter without errors once sold for over $700, underscoring the value of condition rarity. The story of the 1967 Washington quarter also connects to the wider history of U.S. coinage. The removal of silver and the lack of mint marks made coins from the mid-1960s stand out as unusual. This was a time when the mint was experimenting with compositions, designs, and production methods to meet national demand. Errors were almost inevitable given the pressure and volume, and for collectors today, those very mistakes provide the excitement and thrill of the hunt. For everyday people, the idea that a simple 25-cent coin could be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars is hard to believe. Yet, that's exactly the case with certain 1967 quarters. Imagine finding one in an old change jar, only to realize that what you thought was pocket change is actually a highly collectible minting mistake worth enough to cover bills, vacations, or even part of a down payment on a car. Stories like these circulate in collector communities and fuel the enthusiasm for searching through coins. The 1967 Washington quarter error coins serve as a reminder that history, chance, and human error combine to create treasures hidden in plain sight. Collectors treasure these pieces not just for their value but for the stories they carry. The story of a time when America's coinage was changing, when mint marks disappeared, when silver was stripped away, and when mistakes became miracles for those lucky enough to spot them. The 1989 Washington quarter is one of those coins that most people have handled countless times without ever realizing the hidden potential it can carry. To the average person, it's just 25 cents, a simple piece of change used in vending machines, parking meters, or tossed into a coin jar at home. But for collectors, especially those with an eye for detail. The 1989 Washington quarter holds a world of intrigue. Among the hundreds of millions of coins produced that year, there exist error coins, mistakes made at the U.S. Mint during production, that can transform this ordinary coin into a numismatic prize worth hundreds, thousands, and sometimes even tens of thousands of dollars. The fascinating thing about the 1989 quarter is not just its age or its familiar design, but the fact that rare minting errors can make one of these coins worth far more than its modest face value. To understand why the 1989 Washington quarter matters to collectors, you first have to consider its place in U.S. coinage history. Designed by John Flanagan, the Washington quarter debuted in 1932 as a one-year commemorative to honor the 200th birthday of George Washington. The design proved so popular that it became the standard quarter, continuing for decades with only minor modifications. On the obverse, the coin features the portrait of George Washington, while the reverse in 1989 still carried the heraldic eagle design, perched with wings spread and arrows in its talons. This was the design Americans had come to recognize and trust in their daily transactions. By 1989, the Washington quarter was fully transitioned into a copper-nickel-clad composition, as silver had been eliminated from circulating quarters in 1965. That year, both the Philadelphia and Denver mints produced quarters in staggering numbers, hundreds of millions combined. With so many coins being struck, the chance of mistakes at the mint naturally increased, and that's where error coins become a collector's dream. A flawless 1989 quarter in circulated condition is worth only 25 cents, but introduce an error or unusual variety, and suddenly the value skyrockets. One of the most intriguing error types found in 1989 quarters is the off-center strike. These occur when the planchet or blank coin is not seated correctly in the press before being struck. The result is a coin where the design is shifted, often missing part of the image. Slight off-center errors might not add much value, but dramatic off-center strikes, where 40% to 60% of the design is missing, yet the date remains visible, can bring hundreds of dollars at auction. Collectors especially prize these because they are visually striking, easy to identify, and clearly showcase the minting error. Another highly collectible error seen in some 1989 Washington quarters is the double die. A double die happens during the die-making process when the hub imprints the design onto the die more than once in slightly different positions. This results in letters, numbers, or design details showing doubling, almost like a shadow effect. In 1989 quarters, doubling has been noted on the obverse inscriptions such as, "In God We Trust," or the date itself. On the reverse, doubling can sometimes appear on the eagle's wings or lettering around the rim. Depending on the strength of the doubling and the condition of the coin, double die examples can sell for several $100s. Clipped planchet errors are another variety worth mentioning. During the planchet cutting process, if the punch overlaps into an area already cut, the resulting blank will be missing a crescent-shaped section. When struck, the coin shows this missing piece along its edge. Clipped planchets are eye-catching and desirable because they are both rare and easy for anyone to notice. A 1989 quarter with a clipped planchet can easily be worth $14,450 to $16,200, and multiple clips or dramatic shapes can raise values even higher. Perhaps the most exciting errors associated with the 1989 quarter are wrong planchet strikes. This happens when a quarter design is mistakenly struck onto a blank meant for another denomination. Imagine a 1989 quarter struck on a dime planchet, making it smaller and lighter than a normal quarter, or one struck on a cent planchet with a reddish copper tone. Even more dramatic are quarters struck on foreign planchets, which occurred at times when the U.S. Mint was producing coins for other countries. These errors are extraordinarily rare, and when they appear at auction, they can sell for thousands of dollars. Auction records from similar years show wrong planchet Washington quarters selling anywhere from $21,000 to over $30,000, depending on the error type and condition. Die cracks and die cuts also appear on 1989 quarters. As dies are used repeatedly, they wear down and sometimes break. A die crack leaves a raised line across the coin, while a cud forms when a piece of the die breaks away entirely, leaving a raised blob of metal. While minor die cracks might only add $3,410 to $5,320 to the value, large, dramatic cuts can transform a 1989 quarter into a collectible worth several $100s. Collectors enjoy these because each cud is unique, almost like an individual fingerprint of the minting process. Repunched mint marks, known as RPMs, are another type of collectible error. In 1989, mint marks were still hand-punched onto the dies, and if the punch was applied more than once in slightly different positions, the result was a repunched mint mark. On Denver-minted 1989 quarters, some RPM varieties exist and can sell for $5,250 to several $100s depending on how bold the doubling is and how well-preserved the coin remains. Auction history provides the best glimpse into how valuable these coins can be. Off-center 1980s Washington quarters have sold for $20,200 to $22,500 depending on the degree of the error. Double die examples in mint state have brought several $100s, especially when certified by grading services like PCGS or NGC. Wrong planchet strikes from this period often fetch several $1,000s, with some particularly dramatic examples going over $27,000 at major coin auctions. These numbers highlight that even though the vast majority of 1989 quarters are ordinary, the rare flawed ones are prized by collectors and investors alike. Condition, of course, plays a crucial role in determining final value. A dramatic 1989 quarter error in heavily circulated condition may only fetch a modest premium, while the same error in mint state could bring 10 times more. Collectors prefer coins that are sharp, lustrous, and free of heavy marks, as these not only look more appealing but also hold stronger long-term value. That's why many collectors turn to certified coins in protective slabs, ensuring authenticity and condition are both guaranteed. The 1989 Washington quarter also holds an interesting place in the timeline of U.S. quarters. It was among the final years before the launch of the ambitious 50-state quarters program in 1999, which completely transformed the quarter into one of the most collected modern coins in history. As a result, the 1989 quarter still carries the classic eagle reverse design, a style that was about to be retired forever. This adds another layer of interest for collectors who appreciate the traditional design while also hunting for rare error coins. When you think about the excitement these coins generate, it's easy to see why error hunting has become such a popular pastime. The idea that an ordinary-looking coin from your change could actually be worth hundreds or thousands of dollars creates a sense of treasure hunting that appeals to people of all ages. Every time you handle a 1989 Washington quarter, there's the possibility, even if slim, that you might be holding something far more valuable than 25 cents. The 1989 Washington quarter error coins remind us of a larger truth about numismatics. Value often lies in the unexpected. A flawless, ordinary coin may be common, but a coin with a mistake, a visible doubling, a clipped edge, a dramatic off-center strike, becomes something rare and special. Collectors chase after these imperfections not because they are perfect, but because they are unique. So the next time you come across a 1989 quarter, don't just toss it into your change jar. Take a closer look at the details. Inspect the date, the lettering, the mint mark, and the overall design. Look for doubling, cracks, clips, or off-center strikes. You never know when a coin that looks like ordinary change might actually be a rare and valuable collectible. Stories of quarters selling for hundreds or even thousands at auction are not just fantasies. They're real, and they continue to inspire collectors everywhere. Because at the end of the day, the 1989 Washington quarter is more than just a small piece of metal. It's a reminder that even in the most common objects, extraordinary treasures can be found by those who take the time to look. The 1999 Connecticut State Quarter holds a special place in the hearts of collectors and historians alike. As one of the original 5 quarters released in the first year of the U.S. Mint's revolutionary 50-state quarters program, it represents not only a turning point in American coinage but also a celebration of state identity. While millions of these coins were minted and circulated across the country, a small number of them escaped the mint with dramatic errors. Those mistakes, unnoticed by most at the time, have turned the simple 25-cent piece into a coveted treasure worth far beyond its face value. Today, when collectors hear about the 1999 Connecticut State Quarter errors, their ears perk up, because they know these coins can bring in hundreds, even thousands of dollars depending on the rarity and condition. And some of the finest examples have commanded auction prices that make jaws drop. To understand why the 1999 Connecticut Quarter error coins are so significant, we first need to step back to 1999. That year, the U.S. Mint launched the 50-state quarters program, an ambitious initiative that would span a decade, with each state receiving a unique quarter design reflecting its history, culture, or identity. The Connecticut quarter was the last release of the inaugural year, following Delaware, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Georgia. Its design features the famous charter oak, a legendary tree that became a symbol of American independence when, according to legend, Connecticut colonists hid their charter from the British inside the tree's hollow trunk to preserve their autonomy. The design is intricate, with branches spreading across the reverse, giving it one of the most detailed and striking appearances among state quarters. The obverse, like all state quarters, retained George Washington's familiar profile. With such intricate detail, the Connecticut quarter presented unique challenges for the mint. Billions of coins were struck, and while most left the mint as expected, error coins slipped into circulation. For collectors, these are the real prizes, the mistakes that elevate a common 25-cent coin into a collectible masterpiece. One of the most dramatic and popular types of errors seen on the 1999 Connecticut quarter is the off-center strike. This occurs when the blank planchet isn't perfectly aligned in the press, causing the design to be struck off to one side. Some off-center errors are minor, with only a slight misalignment, but the most valuable are those where 40% to 70% of the design is missing while still retaining the date. A Connecticut quarter with a 50% off-center strike once fetched nearly $21,200 at auction because it was visually stunning and rare. Collectors are drawn to these coins because their mistakes are obvious and easily appreciated. Broad strike errors are another category that frequently captivates collectors. Normally, a collar die holds the coin in place during striking, giving it the correct diameter and reeded edge. When the collar malfunctions, the coin can spread out larger than usual, creating a broad, distorted look and often losing its reeded edge. Broad-struck 1999 Connecticut quarters have sold for hundreds of dollars depending on their condition, with prices typically ranging from $43,200 to $48,500 and sometimes more if the coin retains strong mint luster. Clipped planchet errors, where part of the coin is missing due to the blank being cut too close to the edge of the metal strip, also appear among the 1999 Connecticut quarters. These coins look like someone took a bite out of the edge, and they are always favorites among collectors. A single clipped planchet might bring $31,100 to $33,150, but double or even triple clips command far higher premiums, sometimes reaching $22,600 or more at auction. Because each clipped coin is unique, they hold strong appeal for collectors who appreciate the individuality of these errors. Wrong planchet errors are among the rarest and most exciting finds in the Connecticut quarter series. Imagine a quarter struck not on its intended copper-nickel-clad planchet, but on one meant for a dime, nickel, or even a foreign coin. These coins instantly stand out because of their incorrect weight or coloration. A Connecticut quarter struck on a nickel planchet once sold for over $22,000 at auction, and another struck on a cent planchet shocked collectors by bringing in more than $23,000. These are the kinds of errors that leave even experienced numismatists speechless. Another category that gets collectors buzzing is double die errors. These happen when the die used to strike the coin is misaligned during its creation, leading to doubling in parts of the design. On the Connecticut quarter, doubling can appear in the inscriptions Connecticut, 1788, or United States of America, or even in the fine branches of the charter oak. Strong double dies are visually dramatic and bring premiums from $24,200 to $28,800, while more subtle examples may sell for $28,100 or so. Collectors especially prize these because they are directly linked to the die-making process itself, offering a tangible look at how errors occur. Die cracks and cuds are also found on 1999 Connecticut quarters. A cud appears when part of the die breaks away, leaving a raised blob of metal on the coin's surface. These can be small and minor, worth $30 to $50, or large and dramatic, sometimes covering parts of the design, which can push prices into the $23,300 to $600 range. A Connecticut quarter with a large cud near Washington's profile once sold for nearly $17,700, demonstrating just how sought after these mistakes can be. Auction results tell the story of just how high demand is for these error coins. A pristine off-center Connecticut quarter sold for $17,250 at a major numismatic auction. A broad strike example in mint state went for $550. while a dramatic triple-clipped planchet example brought in $17,875. The record holders, though, are the wrong planchet strikes. One sold for $38,200, and another exceeded $43,000, showing that collectors will pay extraordinary prices for the rarest and most unusual mistakes. Part of what makes these errors so thrilling is their accessibility. The Connecticut quarter was minted in huge numbers. Over 1 billion were produced between the Philadelphia and Denver mints, meaning that error coins are still out there, hiding in circulation in coin jars or in collections that haven't been carefully examined. The thought that someone could discover a $25,500 or $26,000 coin in their spare change is what fuels the passion for error coin collecting. The year 1999 also holds special significance because it marked the beginning of the state quarters program. Collectors often view coins from the first year of any major series as particularly desirable. Combine that with dramatic errors, and you have a perfect recipe for high demand. The Connecticut quarter wasn't just any coin. It represented history, artistry, and the start of a nationwide collecting phenomenon. Errors from this year are like a time capsule of the mint's growing pains as it adjusted to producing billions of new designs at an unprecedented pace. And while not every 1999 Connecticut quarter is worth more than face value, the possibility is always there. That's what makes the hunt so addictive. Stories circulate of collectors finding rare off-center strikes or clipped planchets in circulation years after the coins were first minted. For some, these discoveries turn into auction sales that yield hundreds or even thousands of dollars, transforming a simple 25-cent coin into a piece of numismatic history. The beauty of coin errors lies in their imperfections. In a world where precision and uniformity are expected, these mistakes remind us that nothing is perfect. And ironically, it's those imperfections, the off-center strikes, the missing clips, the doubled letters, that make the coins far more valuable than their flawless counterparts. The 1999 Connecticut State quarter error coins are perfect examples of how a common coin can become extraordinary. From dramatic off-center strikes to broad strikes, clipped planchets, double dies, wrong planchet strikes, and cuds, each error tells a story about the minting process and offers a tangible connection to history. Auction records have shown these coins bringing in anywhere from a few $100s to several thousand, depending on the severity of the error and the coin's condition. For collectors, they represent opportunity, history, and excitement all rolled into one. So the next time you hold a Connecticut quarter in your hand, take a closer look. Study the charter oak, inspect the edges, and weigh the coin if you can. Because hidden among the billions of ordinary quarters are rare treasures that could change your perspective on pocket change forever. A quarter worth 25 cents to one person could be worth $500, $1,000, or even more to a collector. That's the magic of coin errors. They transform the ordinary into the extraordinary, and they keep the thrill of discovery alive.